News of the assassination spread quickly, reaching distant capitals such as London and Washington within mere hours. The news was met with shock and horror by governments and monarchs alike. By evening, anti-Serbian sentiment had reached breaking point, and across the empire riots and pogroms soon broke out, first in Zagreb and then everywhere else. In Sarajevo, Governor Poitarek, whose security preparations had gone ass up, even organised and encouraged these, probably making up for the first big L of the 20th century. A day later, the violence had only escalated further. Now Serbs were attacked in the streets, their properties and businesses vandalised and looted. Even Serbian churches were not spared the mob's ire. It was only after the bodies of the Archduke and Duchess were transported out of Sarajevo that the riots calmed down and order was restored. Now we get to the real chaos. The July crisis. In Serbia, Prime Minister Nikola Pasic was briefed about Serbian participation in the assassination. The news was not taken well. Meanwhile, the Austro-Hungarian Empire was split into two factions. The Austrian Reichsrat, headed by Prime Minister Karl von Stuck, demanded vengeance with calls for war kindled by men such as the Chief of the General Staff, Franz Conrad von Hotzendorf, who wanted immediate action. Then there was the Hungarian Országgyűlés, led by István Tisza, who were more cautious and opposed to war. They hoped for a diplomatic resolution, as they feared Russia would come to the Serb aid in a military clash. It was eventually decided that some sort of guarantee would be needed with another amicable nation to deter or aid the empire, should the Russians intervene. Thus, the Austrians turned to the devil himself to satisfy their need for vengeance. Two representatives of the Austro-Hungarian Empire met with Kaiser Wilhelm II and German Chancellor Theobald von Bethmann-Hollweg in a hushed meeting, where the Austrians pleaded their case to the silent Wilhelm, who eagerly listened and allowed the representatives to talk. Sensing the time was right, Wilhelm eventually spoke. He showed the Austrians a visage, a sliver of what Germany could offer them. But he did not ask for anything. He merely stated Germany would offer its full military and economical support to the Austrians, should they decide to take action against Serbia, even if it risked war with Russia. Hearing this, the Austrians were elated and readily thanked the emperor before swiftly heading back to Vienna with their blank check. Now alone, Wilhelm could only laugh as he peered out of a window, looking to the west. Tisza eventually agreed to support the war, fearing that the now impatient Germans would soon denounce the dual alliance and abandon Austro-Hungary. Thus, with the entirety of the empire unified in the decision, an ultimatum was quickly written by Count Berchtold. Finally noticing that the Balkans did indeed exist, the other great powers of Europe were starting to take a full interest. On the 20th of July, French President Poincaré arrived in St. Petersburg, where his effeminate French genetics quickly activated, making him instantly subservient to anyone with a smidge of testosterone, a hormone long lost to the French since the days of Napoleon. Enter Tsar Nicholas, a man so packed with the stuff that the French president couldn't help but throw himself at the Tsar, quickly agreeing to support Serbia against Austria. On the final day of the French visit, the two leaders were rudely interrupted. The long-awaited ultimatum had finally been dispatched to the Serbians, and so the state visit would quickly end. Now nobody knows exactly what was written in the ultimatum, but the contents were so benevolent, so rewarding to the Serbians, that they had no choice but to reject them, lest the Austrians gain any more prestige over them. And so on the 24th of July, Serbia begins to mobilize, drafting every single unwilling peasant that they could find, beating those who refused, and probably beating those who willingly went as well, such as the Serb way. For good measure, they also cut off all diplomatic relations with the Austro-Hungarians. In response to this clear refusal of their lenient demands, Emperor Franz Josef commands the 8th Army Corps to begin operations against Serbia. Their commander immediately invades the... What? You're kidding me, bro. Their commander, National Screw Oscar Poitarek, delays any actions until August, declaring that I was spared at Sarajevo so that I may die avenging it, when questioned about the delay. Though he does order the bombardment of Belgrade, it does very little to affect the Serbs, causing a single death on the Serbian side, while the Austrians lose a handful to drowning. Reactions to the bombardment differed in Europe. France cancelled all leave for its soldiers and ordered the majority of their forces in Morocco to return to France immediately. The British lamented the failure of diplomacy. Even the biggest geezer of the country, George V, took a small break from his busy schedule to react. Russia, meanwhile, placed its military on high alert and prepared for partial mobilization. Germany was over the moon with the news, and without wasting a second, the Kaiser demanded that his most fiendish thrall, General Helmut von Moltke, dispatch a message to the Belgian government, demanding that German forces be permitted to pass through the small kingdom in the event of a war against France and Russia. Obviously, the Belgians refused, telling the hellspawn that no German shall ever set foot upon Belgian soil. Helmut didn't really care, however, as he'd already ordered an ultimatum to be drafted for a future invasion. Meanwhile, in Germany, Wilhelm receives a telegram from St. Petersburg. In it, his cousin Tsar Nicholas begs him to do all that he can to avert a conflict in the Balkans and strive for a peaceful resolution, lest Russia's hand be forced. Wilhelm replies, ignoring his cousin's pleas, and asks only that Nicholas order his soldiers to refrain from trespassing over the border. Nicholas sends another telegram repeating his pleas for a peaceful solution, ending it, however, with a warning. He reveals that Russia has already begun to partially mobilize, but will not initiate any offensive operations if peace negotiations between Austria and Serbia commenced. Nicholas then awaits anxiously for a reply, and when it finally arrives, he finds it to only contain a single line: "Then I must mobilize too." Wilhelm declares a state of Kriegsgefahrzustand over Germany, beginning pre-mobilization and the sealing of the Reich's borders. In St. Petersburg, the German ambassador Friedrich von Portales meets with the Russian foreign minister Sergei Sazonov, demanding that Russian demobilization occurs within 12 hours. When the German ultimatum expires, the two meet again on the 1st of August. Portales asks Sergei if the Russians would reconsider, refusing to believe that the two empires could not come to an agreement. Sergei responds that Serbia would be protected, and the honor of the empire would be defended. Enraged, Portales delivers the German declaration of war before storming out of the office, absolutely spurging out, screeching that the curses of the nations will be upon you, leaving Sergei to ponder those words. A day later, the Germans begin military operations in earnest. In the west, Luxembourg is invaded and quickly occupied, while von Moltke's ultimatum is dispatched to the Belgians. Meanwhile, on the border of France and Germany, in the commune of Jean Charest, Adriana Ducourt rushes into her home, alarming a group of French soldiers who were billeted there, screaming, the Prussians are coming." Grabbing their rifles, the French soldiers rush out to arrest the Germans, finding a small cavalry patrol outside. They resist, and gunfire is exchanged. The skirmish quickly ends in a French victory, with one German, Lieutenant Mayer, laying dead, and 3 of his men injured. Only a single Frenchman, Caporal Peugeot, is lost. In the east, the residents of Kalisz, a city in Russian Poland, witness the arrival of the first German soldiers. While in the Baltics, the German cruiser, the SMS Augsburg, bombards Libau. On August 3rd, Albert I rejects the German ultimatum again, and in response, Germany declares war on France instead. But don't worry, on August 4th, the Germans declare war on Belgium as well, and begin their invasion. In London, the news of the violation of Belgian sovereignty causes uproar, and in response, the British Empire declares war on Germany, thus beginning the Great War.